Hello everyone, this is Leah Whitehorse, and in this recording I'm going to be exploring the astrology of December 2023. So the first thing that occurs during this final month of 2023 is that we have Mercury going into Capricorn. So this is actually on the 1st of December. So generally speaking, when Mercury changes signs, it means that we are changing what we are thinking about, what we are talking about, and indeed changing how we are thinking of things and how we are conceiving and how we are connecting with one another. Mercury is a planet associated with the mind. So in Capricorn, firstly, it slows down our thinking. It encourages us to think in much more practical terms because this is an earth sign. It is a sign that is associated with our career and accomplishments. We are always wanting to climb to the top of the mountain in Capricorn. So it could be talking about conversations with those who are higher up, talking with our bosses, talking with authorities, maybe even talking with our parents or elders, or talking about these topics. Mercury going into Capricorn, though, can also sometimes mean that we can tend to be more skeptical in the way that we think and conceive of things. And maybe too, there can sometimes be some negative thinking because Capricorn is rather more of a restrictive sign. It's ruled by Saturn, who has rings around it, and sometimes this can bring up a lot of doubts. Now, what we also need to remember here is that Mercury is actually going to go retrograde this month. So whatever we're thinking about now, we are likely to return to because Mercury is already in the degrees that he's going to cover during the retrograde period. This is still the shadow period. So we're going to have to come back to this territory. So make a mental note about what you're thinking about, the problems that you're confronting, and the types of conversations you're having. These things you're going to come back to. On the 4th of December, Venus is going to move into Scorpio. So this is a more challenging placement for Venus. This is because the sign that she rules, well, one of the signs that she rules is Taurus, which is the opposite to Scorpio. So she's kind of far away from her home. Yes, she rules Libra as well, the sign beside Scorpio, but either way, she's moving out of this place where she feels very comfortable. And now she's in an area that is not so comfortable for her because Venus likes to keep everything smooth and sweet, and she's all about relating in our relationships. And Scorpio energy is very deep and very watery and very intense. And it likes to get underneath everything rather than try to smooth things over. Now we're trying to make a deeper connection, which sometimes does mean that we have to deal with the ugly stuff in our relationships, which Venus finds a little distasteful, but it pushes her to work. So it's not that she can't work in Scorpio. If you have your natal Venus in Scorpio, please don't worry. You can indeed love and be loved. And in fact, your Venus is working very hard to really form these powerful connections with others. So we have the idea of deepening our intimacy when Venus moves into Scorpio. But also because Venus speaks of the things that we find precious, it can be a transit that does magnify issues around shared resources because Scorpio itself and the corresponding 8th house can speak of how we share what we have, and that's emotionally, materially, spiritually, with another person. And Venus can specifically talk about money. So we might find, especially with Mercury now in Capricorn, we might now find that we are discussing money matters, to get real about these issues with Mercury in Capricorn and Venus trying to kind of figure out if there are any power dynamics here that are making it difficult to relate to one another because there are money issues in the way. You know, sometimes we can find ourselves arguing about this matter with our partners, who's spending what, how much we have or don't have, especially at this time of year. Of course, it can be an expensive time of year, depending on, you know, whether you celebrate, how you celebrate Christmas and so on. So we've just got a little bit of maybe some rumbling to deal with in our relationships around money matters. But ultimately, like I say, if we can clear the way, clear the problems. In fact, Pallas Athena is also here in Scorpio. So we're doing a lot of problem solving here already. So Venus will help us to smooth things over, but without avoiding some of the heavier stuff underneath everything. On the 6th of December, Neptune will station direct. So Neptune has been in retrograde motion since the beginning of July this year. So we've had a long period of time where Neptune has been uncovering where we have been too idealistic, where we have been kind of deluding ourselves. Sometimes Neptune has a very subtle action, but at other times, just like the ocean that Neptune rules, can sort of bring up tidal waves. Sometimes it can just sweep away the things that we wanted or wished for because they are just not realistic, or they are not aligned to us on a spiritual level. Neptune is associated with our spirituality. So it may have been an uncomfortable period of realization. This dream, this wish, this miracle that I'm hoping for is not going to happen. But now, as Neptune stations direct, he says, here are the dreams that you can bring to life. These are the things that can be brought into manifestation. This is your real connection to your soul, to your spiritual path. Now, yes, of course, sometimes when Neptune is stationing, we can get this kind of wobble effect. We feel like, I don't know what to believe. I don't know what's real and what isn't. It all feels a little murky, a little foggy. So maybe we just need to allow for a few days for Neptune to find his feet again, or for us to find our feet or find our way through these waters. And just to pay attention to what dreams are coming up literally at night. What are you dreaming about? Or what are you finding is wandering into your mind when you are quiet, or you're in the bath, or you're washing up, particularly when you're connecting with water in some way? What kind of images, thoughts, music, what are you remembering? Because Neptune is perhaps giving you clues as to how to connect with your spiritual path, or how to connect with your imagination, so that you can be more creative with your life. So Neptune can be very, very good for creativity. But like I say, sometimes a little wobbly around the station dates. Now, this theme with Neptune is going to stay in play because on the 12th of December, we're going to have a new moon in Sagittarius. So generally speaking, the new moon in Sagittarius is a time for us to seed new ideas that will take us out into the world to make our lives bigger and better. It's a very visionary sign. It's a sign that's associated with traveling, literally traveling overseas, or traveling metaphorically by reading lots of books, making your mind expand, giving you these new possibilities. There are so many possibilities when we're in Sagittarius. It's an exciting, adventurous sign. So the new moon in Sagittarius is saying, hey, let's have an adventure. But it is square to Neptune. And Neptune is still on that same degree. It's moved 1 minute, so it's still moving very, very slowly. And what can happen here is that we can get a lot of fantasies and kind of these unrealistic ideas about these adventures that we want to pursue. So we've got a lot of distraction coming in. And so it's going to be very important that we listen to our intuition around this time. So Neptune is associated with our intuition, because otherwise the image that comes to mind is that we're kind of chasing rainbows. You know, oh, shiny, it's all pretty, let's go for that. That looks exciting. And then suddenly we sort of realize that every time we move towards that wonderful shiny thing, it's moving away from us. It's not happening. We can't seem to touch it. It's not real. So this is why it's really important to check in with ourselves about the things that we're visualizing for the future, for the things that we desire and that we want to explore more of. We don't want to end up caught in some kind of illusion. And underneath all of that is the prompt to look at, what do you believe? Because Sagittarius is associated with beliefs and Neptune is associated with spirituality. What do you believe underneath everything? Because that's going to inform how you see things and what you're drawn to. If you believe that, you know, life is terrible, it's going to be awful moving forwards, then that is going to change what you desire and change what you hope for and change what you're moving towards potentially as well. So we've got to kind of get underneath everything. What do I believe and what is meaningful? If you are aligned with those things, then you can make the best of this very imaginative lunation. Now on the 13th of December, this is the date that Mercury is going to station retrograde. So I will be doing another piece about this Mercury retrograde. So it's going to begin in Capricorn and then move back into Sagittarius. It won't go quite back as far as the degree of the new moon in Sagittarius, but still there is this sense that as Mercury is stationing right after the new moon, there is some sense of delay. It feels like we're going to have some kind of delay effect. The intentions that we're seeding around this lunation, it may take a longer period of time before we see the results of that, or we see some kind of tangible sense that this idea is now coming into reality. And in a way, that skepticism that I talked about with Mercury going into Capricorn is perhaps going to be helpful given all of the Neptune effect, because Mercury retrograde in Capricorn is basically saying, is this realistic? Is this idea that you have for changing your job or your career, is this realistic? Is this really going to manifest? Is it really going to work? Is it really you? Does it feel right for you? So Mercury retrograde in Capricorn is going to ask a lot of questions about what we are trying to accomplish and how we are going to do that. Because Capricorn tends to like to have some kind of firm plan. So we're unpicking the plans about what we were trying to accomplish. So like I say, that is quite helpful given the airy-fairy vibe that Neptune can sometimes bring. Of course, with Mercury being retrograde, it does suggest that this is a general period of time when we try not to make any really important decisions. We want to give it some time before we make a conscious choice. Yes, I'm going to take this job, or yes, I'm going to go in this direction, or yes, I'm going to get married and commit to this relationship, because Capricorn can also be about commitments as well. However, I always say, we must never be scared of Mercury retrograde. If you have to give an answer for a job or signing on the dotted line in whatever way, if you have to do it during Mercury retrograde, then that is the energy that is required for that particular endeavor. If you have no choice, if you just can't get around it, don't freak out and think, oh, Mercury's going to just mess this all up. If you have to do it under a Mercury retrograde, then that is required energy. It's more internalized. It's particularly good for internal growth and for learning experiences. So never worry about Mercury retrograde. Just remember, every action of the planets, all planets, not just Mercury, every action is there for us to learn. It's there for a reason. It's not just the planets thinking, hey, I'm going to toy with this person today. Although I think Mercury probably enjoyed that sometimes because he is the trickster. But anyway, so on the 20th of December, Pluto is going to move on to that anaretic degree of Capricorn. I have a thing about watching these degrees. They are incredibly important. Anaretic. This means Pluto is going on to the 29th, the final degree of Capricorn. We know, of course, that Pluto is busy working his way through the end of his journey through Capricorn. He's not quite there yet. He's going to be doing a little bit of in and out until he moves into Aquarius properly in November 2024. But for the time being, from the 20th of December through to the 21st of January, we have Pluto anaretic at a critical point. The 21st of January is when Pluto re-enters Aquarius. We've already had a little preview of this. I have got a video all about Pluto in Aquarius, and there are also other videos giving a reading for your sign. They are all here on YouTube, so I'll put the links below if you haven't seen or heard those just yet. But when Pluto goes anaretic, the degree means that things are a little volatile. It's, like I say, a critical degree. It's a degree that illustrates the idea of breaking down, because you're moving, you're at the end of the line with this particular sign. Pluto is finishing. So we start to get a sort of disintegration effect. And I would suggest that we have been seeing this as Pluto has been hanging around very close to this degree. We are seeing the issue with great leaders, or so-called great leaders, kind of falling down. They are being taken down, or people are asking them to step down. There's issues with, of course, war and power and control and land and barriers and borders, Capricorn. So we're already seeing all of this because we are going through this huge structural change, which is necessary. Pluto in Capricorn says the systems must change because the distribution of power is not as it should or could be for the security or the stability of life moving forwards. So I would anticipate that when Pluto is on this anaretic degree, and it will revisit it one more time between the 2nd of September 2024 and the 19th of November 2024, during these periods, this is when it is likely that we will see acute issues, particularly out there in the world, because Pluto is a transpersonal planet. So yes, things might feel a little hairy around this time because of the nature of Pluto is to apply pressure. It applies pressure to force change, to force the point. Pluto is always going to win. He's basically like, this is what needs to be done, people. This is what needs to be done. And if you don't do it, well, I'm just going to ensure that you do. So like I say, we're particularly seeing this with the leaders, the people who have the power. And so we might see a few more of these kind of kingpins falling during this period when Pluto is on the anaretic degree. For personal stuff, for all of us, when Pluto is on the 29th degree of its sign, we are also likely to feel some kind of sense of pressure in the house where Pluto is currently. So this is kind of Pluto saying, hey, we kind of need to get this done now. This restructuring in this part of your life, this part of life where I have been trying to show you where your power lies, this part of life where I've been encouraging you to take some control. We need to do this now because I'm going to have stuff to do in Aquarius and you're going to have to be working on that. So we need to get this finished. That's the kind of sense that we get from Pluto in our personal charts. So there's a lot to do, but we don't need to be scared of Pluto because remember, like I said before, Pluto is doing what needs to be done so that we can find our power, so that we can deal with our fears, that we can move beyond our shadows. Pluto. Mars will go out of bounds also on the same date. This is kind of interesting. Mars going out of bounds means that, to quote Stephen Forrest, because I always think he has the best description of out of bounds planets, it means that Mars is going to be working in genius or criminal ways. So if we sort of just think about what out of bounds means, it just means that Mars has gone beyond the path of the sun by declination. It's a little bit away from where the sun usually travels, the path that the sun travels in the sky. Of course, it's us that's going around the sun, but just from us looking up in the sky, if you kind of see the sunrise and then you watch the sun all day, it gets up really high and then it will set over in the west. So that path that the sun travels, if you create a line with your finger, that line is called the ecliptic. And generally speaking, the planets will also follow that same line. If you have a nice clear night with a telescope, you would see that the planets, when they rise in the east, they are gradually following that similar path to the sun. But when a planet goes out of bounds, it's higher or lower than that ecliptic line of the sun. And so we think about this scenario in the same way as we think about a game. If you are playing a ball game and the ball goes off the court, off the pitch, that is out of bounds and anything could happen because off the pitch there are no rules to the game. When you're on the pitch, when you're in the path of the sun, you obey the rules. That's how it is because the sun is our creator, technically speaking. It's the source of all life. And that's true. Without the sun, we would not be here. So the sun is saying this is how it's done. These are the rules to how you play your game. But now Mars is saying, well, tough, because I'm not going to play that game anymore. Thank you very much. I'm going to make my own rules up as I go along. So now we start to see how this can be working in genius or criminal ways. Mars is our warrior. He's our strength, our courage, our bravery. He's our leadership. He's the part of us that gets us up and going. He's the part of us that fights for what we want, he desires. So now we can start to see how this can be a tricky influence, because Mars kind of just doing what he wants. It's like a soldier with no orders, just doing whatever they think is necessary to win the battle, win the war. Yeah, that can get us into trouble. But at the same time, if we think of a different kind of scenario where someone who is a leader of some kind, who just kind of thinks, well, all the rules of how we're supposed to do things aren't working, so I'm going to try something completely new. And that can be inspirational. So we can have inspirational leaders or inspirational actions that's just kind of spontaneous. It just happens, that can take us in a whole new direction. But we just have to be kind of conscious, I always say this, just conscious of this energy in play, especially if we're feeling triggered or feeling like we really desire this situation, this to happen. I want this. What are you wanting? And maybe there are ways to get what you want by freeing yourself from some of the constraints of the past, but also just watch where your energies are going, because we can actually lose energy when Mars is going out of bounds. So again, Mars will be out of bounds until the 23rd of January 2024. The Sun will then move into Capricorn on the 22nd of December. So this is the winter solstice in the northern hemisphere, the summer solstice in the southern hemisphere. This is the point when the Sun stands still. So solstice, sol is sun, and stis or stisse is connected to standing still. So we have a moment in time when everything is just still. And then the wheel of the year turns and we are into a new season. Winter in the northern hemisphere, summer in the southern hemisphere. So Sun in Capricorn, generally Capricorn season, we are focused on issues connected to Capricorn. What can I accomplish? I, because it's the Sun, it's personal, it's our identity, it's our purpose. What is my purpose here? This is one of the questions we're asking when the Sun goes into Capricorn. I always think it's really interesting around this time of year as we're coming to the end of the year, that we are asking these questions. What is my purpose? What am I trying to accomplish? Because often we are doing a bit of reassessment because we're looking back on the year that we've just had and we're looking forward to the year that we're moving towards. And we're kind of trying to figure out, did I use my time wisely? Did I manage to accomplish what I set out to do? And this is going to be emphasized because just as the Sun moves into Capricorn, we're also going to have a conjunction with Mercury. So the Sun-Mercury conjunction also on the 22nd of December. And this marks the midpoint of the Mercury retrograde period. So this turn of the season is really marked by a lot of these questions about purpose and accomplishment and authority and boundaries and all of these kinds of things, all the things that I've been talking about with Mercury retrograde in Capricorn. These are going to be illuminated around this time, and we might have some realizations around this time. And isn't it interesting? We're going to have this conjunction of Mercury and the Sun on the 0 degrees of Capricorn, whilst Pluto is hanging out on the final degree of Capricorn. We have some big story here about beginnings and endings. The beginning, 0, ending, 29th degree. Important beginnings and endings. We are having realizations, or we are talking about these things around this time. And then on the 23rd of December, Mercury will then move back into Sagittarius. So now we're kind of switching up those questions, and we're probably looking a lot at where am I going? What do I believe? Again, that question, it came up at the new moon in Sagittarius. What do I believe? Also, what do I know? What do I think I know? Maybe I'm missing some kind of information. And on a global level, we're talking about, perhaps we're going over the same conversations about international communication, with Mercury going back into Sagittarius. But what do I believe? What do I know? What do I think I know? What is my philosophy of life? These are the topics that we're exploring as Mercury goes back into Sagittarius. For Christmas Day, if you are celebrating this date, we do have a lovely Venus trine to Neptune. I just wanted to mention it. I don't normally talk about the smaller aspects in these monthly forecasts, but I thought it would be nice to know that we have this very lovely transit for Christmas Day. We often associate this time of year with love and peace and kindness and giving, and this is exactly what Venus trine to Neptune is all about. So have a lovely day if you are celebrating. On the 27th of December, we have the final lunation of the year. So this will be the full moon in Cancer. So the full moon in Cancer will bring to a culmination, perhaps, issues connected to home and family, the sense of belonging, the sense of one's roots. Obviously, these kinds of issues anyway are a little bit more emphasized, again, because of the holiday season, because of the associations we have with Christmas. So sometimes there can be some tension between home and work, or the sense of belonging and the sense of rules and structure, and again, what we think we should do. But generally speaking, this is quite a well-supported lunation. So I kind of feel like we're ending this year on a more positive note, with this particular lunation being quite well supported. Yes, there's a lot of background stuff going on with Pluto anaretic and all of that stuff. But still, I think this will help us to see where we got things right, or maybe I should even say, help us to feel what is right. Because the moon in Cancer, the moon is associated with Cancer. It's the ruler of Cancer, so the moon is very, very well situated here in its own sign. And it encourages us to feel our way through the situation. Yes, it's a challenge with the sun in Capricorn, because this is the realist, the sign of the realist, and these are the rules and the structures that we're meant to abide by, and we can feel a bit restricted by those sometimes, but we have to find a balance in the same way as we have to find a work-life balance. So the moon in Cancer, well supported by other planets, we have this sense of just feel your way through. Now, interestingly, also on the same date, very shortly after this lunation, Chiron will station direct. So Chiron has been retrograde in Aries, working on the wounds that we have that in some way stop us from being independent, from being brave, from being assertive, or feeling like we can go after what we want, or that we have a right to be here, a right to life and a right to thrive. Sometimes we have wounds that hurt so much we feel like maybe I'm not even meant to be here, or maybe I'm not meant to kind of follow the things that I'm passionate about, and maybe I just can't, maybe I'm not brave enough, maybe I don't have any courage. And Chiron's been doing this really hard work, saying you absolutely are meant to be here. You wouldn't be here otherwise. You are meant to be here. You are allowed to follow your desires. You're able, you're capable of being brave and kind of striking out into new ground. You are strong. You just don't know this. You don't know your strength. So Chiron has been really busy working on this. And now he says, right, you're strong enough now. You're strong enough to pursue that passion, or to, initiate this situation or this goal, whatever it is. Now you're strong enough. But as he stations, again, a wobbly planet, a wobbly moment, and we might feel like, I'm not strong enough. I'm not strong enough to do this. But sometimes you have to test yourself. You have to push yourself in the same way as if you hurt yourself, if you twist your ankle, you've got to rest it for a while. You've got to allow it to heal, but then you have to start walking on it again, else the muscles are just not going to get strong again. So we have to give ourselves a little push sometimes to do the things, even if they hurt a bit. Not so much that you actually push yourself too hard, but sometimes we have to give ourselves a little push. Go on. You can do this. That's Chiron stationing direct. Now, the challenge with that, Mars square to Neptune, following right on the heels on the 28th of December. Mars now is saying, but I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. Neptune is, again, this distracting influence. It's foggy. It's dreamy. It's maybe misdirected. Mars square to Neptune sometimes can run out of steam, or it can feel disorientated, and we don't know whether our actions are having any effect. We can't see it. Neptune speaks of the invisible, so we can't see whether what we're doing is changing anything, is doing anything. And so sometimes we do have to trust that the actions we are taking are actually having some kind of ripple effect. The biggest thing to watch around this time, though, is feeling disillusioned or feeling like, I can't be bothered. What's the point? We can sometimes fall into that, or feel like somebody's poured cold water on all of our ideas or inspiration or motivation, feeling demotivated. In fact, sometimes the simple answer to Mars square to Neptune is just have a rest day. This could be a pajama day, a movie day, or evening or afternoon. Just have a little bit of time out. If you feel tired, sometimes the warrior has to rest. Mars square to Neptune. We then have Venus moving into Sagittarius on the 29th of December. So Venus going into Sagittarius is going to change the way that we are relating. Venus in Sagittarius tends to prefer to be on a longer lead. So in our relationships, we tend to want to have a bit more of a free rein. We tend to want to have more excitement, more fun. It's great for traveling together, although we do have to bear in mind Mercury is retrograde right now. So if you can both be patient whilst there are delays on the trains or the coaches, then that probably says a lot of good about your relationship. So we do have Venus and Mars both now in Sagittarius. So there is this drive to go places, to feel like your relationship is going places, to want to dream with one another. Mars square to Neptune still. So there is this kind of sense that we're trying to explore where we're going as far as our relationships are concerned. And maybe it's also important to check in with, are we on the same page about where we see this all going, what we find inspiring? Are we on the same page when it comes to our beliefs? And does it matter if we're not? So these are some of the questions that come up with Venus going into Sagittarius. 30th of December, I'm just pointing out that Pluto will end its square to the nodes. This has been an ongoing situation for months. Pluto square the nodes. How many times I've talked about this in every reading I've been doing, because it's been so fundamental, especially Pluto in Capricorn, a sign that speaks of foundations. So this dealing with the foundations of our lives has been a karmic mission. It's been a karmic mission to face our fears and deal with the stuff that we didn't want to deal with before. It's been really important. Pluto square to the nodes has encouraged us to make those changes. Yes, it's still intense and it still has a karmic flavor to it, with Pluto being on that final degree of Capricorn. But still now it's moving away from the nodal axis. So we get a little bit of relief in some ways as this aspect finally moves away. And then on the 31st of December, the final day of the year, Jupiter will station direct. So now it almost feels like we are getting ready for that new year. Whilst Jupiter was retrograde, he was encouraging us to take an inner journey to ensure that we were ready for the outer developments, the opportunities, the promises that Jupiter can bring. Wherever Jupiter is moving in your chart, he is going to bring opportunities to develop. This is where you need to have faith, says Jupiter. But it's also important that we have the sort of practical application behind that we know what our resources are, Jupiter in Taurus, and that we're kind of sensible and approach things in a simple way, so that we can take advantage of the opportunities that are available to us. So Jupiter stationing direct says, okay, we've done this inner work. You're ready now to start this new endeavor or to restart what you were doing before, so that you can increase your security, to feel more secure in life, and maybe even to increase your sense of abundance or increase your money. Jupiter in Taurus is talking a lot about our financial situation. So now we are ready for these opportunities for development. And it's also important to remember that this is the degree where Mercury stationed direct, I think it was May in 2023, if I remember rightly, but also more importantly, it was the eclipse degree, the Taurus eclipse that we had in October, the lunar eclipse in Taurus. It was all the same degree. So it really feels like issues that were connected with that Taurus eclipse, that lunar eclipse at the end of October. Now we see things come to fruition. Now we feel like this really is a turning point just as we complete 2023. This brings me to the end of this reading. I hope you found it helpful. If you did, please do give it a like, leave a comment. And also, if you want to hear more from me and you'd like to support this channel, I do have a Patreon. I will also leave the link below. I do lunation readings. I do a Q&A bi-monthly, and there's loads and loads of articles and videos over there, a whole library of stuff there. I also have a Substack. If you're not into Patreon, I have Substack as well, so that's more written content. I'll also leave that link below. And in the meantime, I wish you many blessings on your path, and also a very happy, healthy and prosperous and peaceful New Year.